episode of the Worldwide Workshop. This is my partner Justin.
And this is my partner Matthew.
And today we're going to be talking about the Nova Scotia Early Learning Curriculum Framework. So, first of all, I just wanted to point out that in our Nova Scotia Early Learning Curriculum Framework, there's not really a lot of new information. It's just kind of a reminder of what we've always known in the early childhood education research. When we actually consider how children learn best throughout the last over 100 years, we know that play-based is what works best. Working with children individually is what works best. It's only from government intervention and busyness/laziness that we start to see our daycares and our childcare spaces as little factories to make, constructive members of society. But that's not what the research has ever said. And the whole point of the Early Learning Curriculum Framework is to remind ECEs not to focus on achievement in a way that is measured by X's and check marks, that sort of thing. Anywho, so today we are going to break down we're going to start with the learning goals. So we're going to break down the 4 learning goals of the curriculum framework, and we're going to explain them and share a bit of an example. Justin, what's the first learning goal?
The first learning goal is well-being, and the way that we're looking at it is, like you pointed out, happy, healthy, and safe. And it's a way to encourage both families and children, and probably the staff, to feel welcome in a space and feel that they can really contribute within that safe space.
Yeah, absolutely. So my example for well-being comes from my days in pre-primary. I had a lot of children in there. We all started on the same day, so it was really hard to have a community and a culture already established for when children were coming in, so you had to establish it brand new every year in September. So one of the things that I did for well-being was we had this long mirror, and I set it up on a table, and I set up different soft paintbrushes. I set it up as a makeup center. Now in the past, there have been people who have done makeup and face paint with children, and it's been, hit or miss, yes or no, that sort of thing. But the different thing about my makeup center is that there was no makeup. It was just the brushes, and sometimes the brushes just with water. This happened just before COVID, so it was before everything would have been hyper sanitized, but you can still sanitize your brushes. You can still have a variety of brushes so that we're not touching different people's faces with them. And what I would do is I would sit at the table and, welcome the children over to join me. We'd already developed a relationship, so they knew me in the classroom. And I'd say, first I'd just demonstrate with the brushes what I was doing. Can you get me a brush real quick? So we'd be sitting at the table, and I'd grab a brush, any old brush, and I'd start to follow the lines of my brow or follow the line of my cheek, sort of thing. So I'll use this big brush. Not that I'd ever use this brush with the children. I'd use much smaller brushes, but I would just do this at the table and look into the mirror. And the whole point of this for me was kind of to connect children to that, seeing their parents putting on makeup. Probably most likely the mothers, but you never know, people put on makeup. So just this process, and then bringing that process into the classroom, this as play for the children to engage in it in a way that wasn't putting on makeup. It wasn't against anybody's beliefs to rub a brush on the face, sort of thing. Because sometimes you can have different parents who have different opinions about that. And what this did for me, it's just so soft. It's like a little massage for the face. And all of a sudden, I'm feeling more relaxed. I'm feeling more at ease. I feel like this is a place where I can take a breath and really feel like I belong. So that's something that I set up. And what ended up happening is the children would want to do that with me, which is a big risk because children can be pretty aggressive. But then they'd do this to me, and then they do it to each other. So I would go to my friend and just, oh, I'm putting on your eyeshadow. Doesn't that feel nice and smooth and soft? Oh, yes. And that sort of thing. And it was this opportunity for the children to support each other and feel good with each other and just do have this little simple moment of peace and kindness and generosity. It was just really wonderful about building relationships.
I just want to add something because
Okay.
this is something that a story that just sort of happened where another teacher who is not part of a classroom, they started to observe a teacher with their arms out sitting in a bench or on a nice comfy chair, and the children were just rubbing their little fingers along there. Something that people need to think about is your energy that you give to children.
Hmm.
And so if you are up here anxious or something like that, and the children are helping you sort of regulate that, and you can have that conversations through them, then the children are starting to feel that you're starting to kind of come down from that. And then they might do that to each other, or they might do that themselves, and you're building the capacity of, oh, that does feel good, and I can sort of regulate my emotions that way.
Yeah, it's a way of self-soothing and soothing their peers. And we talk about that a lot with children with autism or children who are neurodivergent who need self-soothing. But all children can benefit from soothing interactions, right? It is a time of kindness. These are young children, so you can do these soothing activities, and it will really help with their well-being. All right. Our next topic that we are going to talk about is discovery and invention. The learning goal, discovery and invention. So for this learning goal, it's something we do a lot in emergent curriculum. What we do is we don't teach what we already know. We provide opportunities and space and relationships for children to demonstrate what they know, for children to ask their own questions. And instead of us answering their questions, we simply go on the journey with them of discovering their own answer to that question. Instead of saying, why is the sky blue? Because it reflects the ocean, blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure why the sky's blue. Let's look into that. Where could we find out information about that? Or what do you think is the reason that the sky's blue, right? Engage in kind of those discussions. So Justin's got an example of this that he's going to share.
So, my example for discovery intervention comes from some children that were in the classroom and they wanted to see outside of the classroom, but the window was just a bit too high for them to actually see over. So, they were trying to figure out ways to do that. They would climb on each other, they would bring things over for them to kind of look, but it never felt permanent, and it never felt welcoming for them to have to always bring something over, and whether they might fall, they might slip.
Well, also, other adults sometimes when they enter the room, they say things like, you can't stand on
Yeah,
chairs. You can stand on chairs. Let's be real.
right.
But yeah, so they were probably looking for something that was
Yeah.
purposely for standing on and looking at.
So for me, I asked them a question of, well, what can we do to see that? And their response was, we could make a bench. And so I first asked them what the bench was, and they said it's something for you to stand on and be able to reach something or look out at something. So I had asked them to draw it and kind of let me see what they were thinking, because I had my own idea of what a bench is. So they quickly drew a simple little sketch of two legs and a platform. And so I thought, well, how do we make this? So they would come over and start getting blocks that were in the classroom and trying to figure out ways for that. And then somehow somebody donated wood to our classroom, and we happened to have nails and hammers. So we kind of took the plan and took all the things that we tried, and we put it all together, and the children were able to make a bench and bring it into the classroom for everybody to use, and then climb up on, and it seemed to work. It was pretty sturdy too.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's really important to enrich the environment with materials that are not just one-use toys, but materials, loose parts, and different materials that can allow the children to evolve their ideas, bring their ideas to life. Having things like hammers and nails, tools, and gloves and goggles for safety. And then reaching out to the parents for the added, necessity of consumables like wood that's going to be turned into the bench. Yeah, it's really important to have that enrichment. So what did they do with this bench?
So they brought it over to the window, and they were able to create a plan, or I guess an outline of who's going to be able to see out the window, because it was not very big. It might have had two people on the bench. So they had to take turns, and they were able to negotiate that between each other as a group on how long they can actually look out the window.
Right, and I mean that's a really good example of invention, particularly because often as adults in the room, we want to protect the children from discomfort. We want to make their negotiations work out. So we might feel the urge to create a rule and say, "Oh, you can have 2 minutes, and then I'm going to make a list, and Justin can have the next 2 minutes,
Right.
and then Matthew can have the third 2 minutes." And when we do that, we take away their ability to invent those rules. So they made the bench, the stool, and they came up with the rules and decided how it would be used. And it is their power, it is their thing to use, and it no longer is part of this control in the classroom from the adults. It's no longer an extra job for a teacher to do, an ECE to do, but now it just becomes this extra opportunity for negotiation and discussion. At first the rule might be only one person at a time, but then they might renegotiate when two very close people can stand there together because they're closer friends and they can negotiate that better, right? And allowing that to evolve.
And so far we talked about well-being, and then we talked about discovery and invention, and this is how the learning goals come to life, because it becomes an ongoing practice in the classroom, so the children then know what to expect from these, because you're living and breathing these learning goals.
And developing them together. It's not something that's handed down to them or told to them from the adults in the room. It's something that's shared and built together. Mm-hmm. All right.
So we're going to move on to looking at language and communication. And language and communication can mean so literal to some people, and some can look at it from a more broader range of understanding it. And the way that we're going to be looking at it is through an example from Matthew, but language isn't just written. It can be a verbal, it can be non-verbal, but Matthew will use his example to kind of really illustrate what language and communication is.
Yeah, so language and communication is all about expressing your thoughts, your ideas to other people. And people often talk about how do we get them to start making letters and saying words or using words and writing words. And we always had this really great example starting at Peter Green Hall, that the children naturally in the preschool age kind of notice the use of symbols for power. And what they do is they start creating these signs, right? So we found children will just get a piece of paper and do a little doodle on it and then say, this is my sign that says don't touch. I'm going to put it on my work up here, and then you'll know that you can't touch it, and we'll know that everybody can't touch it. And why do you want to put a sign on your work so that nobody can touch it? Well, they're going for a snack, or they're going to wash their hands, or it's time to go outside. And they want to make sure that they can come back to their work and continue developing their idea, a la discovery and invention. But yeah, so just, it's not like it is the symbol for a stop sign or a don't touch. They're not using the correct language. They're using the concept of a symbol as power when they're not in the room, sort of thing. And it's just so magical. The more they use it, the more power it has, the more they want to learn how to use complex symbols or predetermined symbols together. And the literacy just happens, right? We don't have to force this on children. We can just use it, model it, and understand it and agree to it when they do try.
And they have these, if you still build this in, they're transferring these skills. So if you're on a walk and they see that a red means stop, they might come into the classroom and draw like just a red circle and put it on the work. Or they might draw a sad face because somebody yelled at them, and they're able to communicate through a picture.
Yeah, and facial expression is a huge part of language and communication. You can say the same word two ways and it means different things.
Are you going to try it?
Am I going to try it right now?
Yeah, for the camera.
Okay, so you could say, let's go to the carpet, and grab their hand and smile, go to the carpet, you're going to go play together. Or you could say, let's go to the carpet, and you need to come with me right now. There's an emergency or something very important happening. And it completely changes the way the message is received and what you're going to do in that situation. So yeah, it's really important to be able to read and understand the different nonverbal communications. But yeah, it's something that we're always doing in the classroom. It's not an additional thing that we have to try. We are communicating with children from birth. They are looking to communicate with us, right? They start crying because they need something. We respond. Then they know that when they cry, they will get a response.
And it's building a culture within that classroom or learning environment to allow that to keep moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, the fourth learning goal in the Nova Scotia Early Learning Curriculum Framework is personal and social responsibility. I find personal and social responsibility really simple stuff because it's always on my mind. It's working with children on how to be a good human, how to be good to themselves, how to be good to their friends, how to be good to the environment, right? And it's about respecting place, materials, other people, the planet, animals, just respecting everything. So Justin, I believe you have an example of how to engage in personal and social responsibility.
I do.
Okay.
So, where I was working, there was a community playground that all the children go to, and every day the children have to walk past it to get to the daycare or the school. And they noticed that it's always filled with garbage, and they just felt really upset at that. So they came to school and they just said, "Hey, for the outing today, we want to go and clean up our backyard," which is their houses are the backyard to the playground. And so with that, I asked them, "What do we need?" And they said gloves and garbage bags. So we were able to collect those, and then we went and they started to point us where we need to go because their homes literally backed onto the playground, and they wanted to start from their fence and work their way to the playground. So we started cleaning up there, and then we noticed the more we were cleaning up, the bags were getting full, and because they're 4-year-olds, these bags are heavy, so we had to figure out a way to carry them to the garbage, which is on the other end of this play space. And so the children would collect them all, and then they're feeling exhausted, and they're even talking about why are people doing this to their home. And so we really had a conversation about what that looked like, what does that mean. And it goes back to the language and communication where they're starting to create signs of don't throw your garbage here, throw it in the garbage bin. And so they're using a lot of skills that they've done before into this personal and social responsibility of keeping their space clean for others and themselves.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful example because, the personal responsibility comes from cleaning up their backyard.
Right.
Even if you didn't make the mess, it's still your yard. You still need to keep it clean. And then moving into the park space to be more of a social responsibility. That's really interesting. Also, it's a great example because it's kind of this starting point for the discussions to occur later. When they're in the classroom and they just crumple up their paper and throw it on the ground. Remember when we had to clean up the garbage in the park? That was a lot of work, and right now you're creating the mess like the litter bugs in public. So it gives the children kind of this place to start from to discuss with each other and peer mentor and support each other in being more socially responsible in the classroom, outside the classroom, and just in daily life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So another point I really wanted to make about that's all the learning goals, right? There's just 4. They're really simple. You use them all the time. It's just trying to pick out which one matches which activity. But another really important fact is that pretty much everything you do is going to have multiple learning goals involved. Justin's talking about how the cleaning up the garbage is both personal social responsibility and it's about language and communication. But you could also wrap well-being in there. Cleaning up your space is outside. Cleaning up that space is making you feel better, making you have a clearer mind, making you feel like you have value in a community or as a part of that community. So it's 3-in-1 sort of thing. The example of the makeup is, yes, it's well-being, but it's also language and communication, understanding different cues and being able to communicate what you like and dislike in ways that you're not going to say, stop, I don't like that, because they're doing something very kind. So you kind of find different ways to be like, oh, that doesn't feel very nice. Maybe you could try it a different way, sort of thing, right? Again, you're developing multiple learning goals at the same time.
And that is building a sense of culture and community within the classroom using these 4 learning goals, because you're understanding how the children are thinking through these different mediums.
Absolutely.
Or ways of being.
Ways of being. Important stuff. All right, so that's really kind of just the long and short of our explanation. And now we have a little bit of homework for you before you come to our event. So at our event, I'm just going to let you know, we're going to be doing a lot of playing, and we're going to be asking you to look around for different ways that you can see well-being, language and communication, discovery and invention, and personal and social responsibility in the various different types of play that we've got set up. But what we want you to do before you do that is to share with us, you'll bring this with you to the event, share with us what you know best and where you have the most learning to do. So first of all, we want to know, what learning goal do you find it easiest to bring about in your classroom? What are you a pro at doing? So we'd like you to write down your 2 best, like think about it, consider which one you do the best, and then write down 2 examples of how you bring that forth in your classroom, how you make it available or visible or happening in your classroom. And with those examples, if you could, bring a picture or an artifact that kind of demonstrates that into the class, into our event on Saturday. And the second piece is that we'd like you to consider, what do you have the most trouble demonstrating in your classroom or thinking about in your classroom? What is it that you just doesn't really make that much sense to you in kind of bringing it forward? Or, I mean, maybe you're really good at all of them, but this was the one that you just do the least, or you always do it the same sort of way. So we'd like you to consider that, and also to consider, why is this a struggle for you? Like, what is it about this one that is unlike the others that makes it more difficult to kind of demonstrate in your class?
And that will help us with our discussion and helping you see the potential that you have within the space.
Yeah. So Justin, I'm just going to ask you right off the cuff.
Yeah.
What's your example of this? What do you have the most trouble thinking about and demonstrating?
I think for me is well-being, because I, in my own practice, I never consider that the things that I do well-being, but it is because it helps me, like painting, for example. I'm a painter, so I like to use that medium to calm me, but I never name it or recognize it when I do that in the classroom.
Right. I mean, that's such a great example, because we're always doing these things. We just aren't necessarily recognizing or putting the word to it that this is well-being. You are calming yourself. You are self-soothing. Yeah. You are expressing your emotion out onto the page, and all of a sudden you feel better. That's a well-being practice. But you might think it's not. You might think it's a different kind of discovery and invention, art practice.
And I would say also, I mean, the fact is to recognize it for yourself and be able to bring it into the classroom, because that makes you be authentic, and then the children can start seeing your personality come through and say, oh, that's what happens if Justin's painting or doing something. That means he needs to calm down, or whatever that might be. And so it's really nice to transfer those skills onto the children to have that authentic experience, so they know what they're doing for themselves.
Wonderful. Are you going to ask me?
Matthew, which one are you finding the most challenging for you?
So for me, what I find the most challenging is personal and social responsibility. And it's not that I find it challenging to do, it's that I find it challenging to do naturally, or in a variety of ways. It's easy for me to get children to pick up after themselves. It's easy for me to get children to put their stuff in the spot where it belongs. But when it comes to art, where are we doing personal and social responsibility? When it comes to building structures, how are we doing personal and social responsibility? When we're going on walks, if we see garbage, yes, we can do personal and social responsibility. But what if there is no garbage? How do we then do personal and social responsibility? So I find for me the struggle is doing personal and social responsibility in a way that is not corrective or too adult influenced, in a way that is more natural. Right. So I like your example, That's really wonderful, but that's just the one I struggle with the most. Anyway, I hope our examples help you to consider yours. I hope you have different examples than we do. And I hope you have a lot of fun when we see you on Saturday at our event.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. We'll see you soon. Bye now.
Bye.